Have you ever thought to yourself, I really want a little mini Beretta to carry around concealed all day, but you gotta have that hammer fired rig with the safety because polymer striker rigs just aren't your thing? Well, I have a little something you might be interested in the way of the Beretta Cheetah 80X in 380. That's right, guys. I ventured down the 380 road in the mini-me version of the 92, which is similar to what the US military carried from like the 1990s up until about 2017. Now this is the micro compact version of like the M9 or the 92 series. So I was once issued a Beretta M9, so I have a little bit of nostalgia with those things. However, the M9 that I was issued was absolutely worked over. It had probably been used by hundreds of Rangers prior to me. So needless to say, it was not a finely tuned and well-oiled machine at that part. It was pretty much neglected in about every way you could think of because young Rangers are not easy on gear. But I eventually gave them another shot when I got the Beretta 92 XI SAO in, and I have to say I actually really liked that thing. It was a much more refined and a nicer pistol overall than the one I had had in the military years previously. And for that reason, I really wanted to get a smaller version of it in, and I really liked the Langdon Tactical Compact stuff, but at like 3 times the cost, I couldn't really justify that. So I figured, why not check into the 80X Cheetah series and try out some 380 because I've never really owned a 380 before. Because let's just face it, who doesn't like something that looks like a little mogwai that got wet and bred a little gremlin right in the middle of the night? Now, if you've never been on the channel before, a lot of things like this 80X Cheetah come in as loaners for review, usually upon my request, like this one did from Beretta. But that in no way changes what happens. If you watch any of my recent videos, you'll pretty much see I don't hold back in reviews. Every item has to stand on its own. However, I give everything a fair shake because if something may not be my personal cup of tea, it doesn't mean it's not really good for somebody else. So you'll see that probably as the video goes on or as you see other videos of mine, but just keep that in mind. And if you are interested in anything we were talking about today, I will have a build list. That'll be the first link down below where you can check out everything you see in the video today and do all of your own research. And if you're a cultured individual watching this on your employer's TV in the break room via casting from your personal device, I'll put a QR code up here so you can check things out as you watch the video and scare people out of the break room. Well, 380, right? A caliber that plenty of people make fun of. And since I've actually never owned or had a 380 in for testing before, I had to go pick a few hundred rounds of ammunition up along with all the accessories to make this range work happen. Of course, all of which I picked up from Brownells. Been shopping there since like 2007. They're a ton of support here to the channel, so they're pretty much my go-to and have been for a very long time since I placed my first order. And if you're a cultured individual that likes to carry around all metal hammer-fired love out there in the world but wants some sweet suede-backed leather with Kydex front and the hybrid configuration, make sure you check out Hidden Hybrid Holster. They got a ton of different options, all of which is extremely comfortable and very secure since they have that Kydex molded front. Let's tackle any problems first because we're getting the dirty stuff out of the way first so you guys can make a more informed decision, right? When it comes to issues out on the range with the 80X Cheetah, I had 2 failures to feed in the testing of about 400-ish rounds, maybe a little bit more, because I went through all of the ammunition that I bought, and then I borrowed a box or 2 from a buddy of mine just to get a few more rounds through it. And I'll give you a chance to take a wild guess in the comments down below why I had those 2 malfunctions. Then I'll kind of tell you the story now. So basically, prior to the range day, I had been cleaning a whole bunch of pistols for testing, and I actually forgot to lubricate this one. So I got a few hundred rounds into the day, and I had that the 2 failure to feed. So immediately kind of wondered, oh, what happened there? Nothing looked wrong with the brass. I went through the rest of that magazine, as you can see on the video. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh man, I forgot to lubricate this thing. So I threw some gun butter on it, went through the rest of the range day without a single hiccup. Now I always tell people to dry fire, clean and lubricate their firearms, usually in a video, because that makes you a little bit more prepared for your first range day. But I had a mistake on this one. So you can tear me apart in the comments. I forgot to lubricate it, and I'm pretty sure that's what caused the issue because no other issues arose out there in testing. And that was whether I was testing basic ball or self-defense ammunition. So what exactly is the 80X Cheetah? Because it's pretty much the mini-me shrunken down, been in the dryer too long version of the 92 with a few modern changes. Some of the best changes here is obviously this thing is going to be optics ready. If you don't want to run an optic, you can run the iron sights. You will get 2 pick slots up there for lights or whatever you want to throw on the rail, mini bayonets included. Yes, they do exist. It's got a smaller vertex style grip on there. That way it's a little bit easier to get your hand around and conceal if you got smaller hands. It's got a frame mounted safety rather than a slide mounted one like the M9 service pistol did. Another updated feature is it's going to have front and rear serrations, which I am a huge fan of. These will have double action, single action style triggers, so you have to be used to those. That first trigger pull is going to be a bit longer, a little bit heavier, but then after that first reciprocation of the slide, you get that really nice, short and crisp hammer fired style trigger pull, which is really, really good. Because usually one things that suffer on these smaller pistols is triggers kind of get grittier and heavier usually when the pistol gets smaller. If you've experienced that out there, let us know which one it was in the comments. But Beretta actually did a very good job on this trigger for how small the pistol is. Likely because the parts are a little bit more finely machined. It's more of an adjustable performance style trigger in there, and it's all nitrided, which is going to make a slight difference out there on the range, especially once you get some rounds through it. But it will still have that classic open slide look, so you can see that barrel, which is kind of that iconic Beretta design that you see in like a ton of action movies from the 80s all the way through like the early 2000s. You'll probably see a Beretta 92 style pistol even in videos today. Out on the range, you will get two 13-round metal magazines. They do have 10-round options available if you are in a restrictive state, but I got the two 13s because I live in Arizona, so I get the full standard capacity setup here. Now out there, I have to say it was actually quite easy to control the recoil impulse on here, even for how small this pistol was. That trigger definitely took a minute to get used to, especially if you're not normally running a single action, double action trigger. That first pull off safe is gonna be a little bit different. And then after that, you get that clean, crisp break like I already talked about. The grip size here, it's actually just enough to get a full extra large to XXL sized hand on with just a little tiny bit of pinky overhang in front of that mag well. The recoil, it's pretty easy to control here. Since the slide has minimal weight to it, it's not reciprocating a ton of mass backwards. It's got a pretty low bore axis. It's got a really good beaver tail on it. And of course, that 380 is not as punishing as something like a 45 or that big Desert Eagle 50 cal, right? So pretty easy to keep under control. Even running this pistol for the first time, I noticed it was pretty easy to aim. It's got those neutral grip angles, which I'm a huge fan of. Even the mag exchanges just seem to be pretty natural with those 13-round metal magazines. And the fact that the slide lock, slide release was right where I needed it to be. That trigger guard is pretty long, making it really easy if you got longer fingers to get that finger on the trigger, because the trigger is more forward set in there. So that was definitely well done. And that's actually an area where smaller pistols give people with larger hands a lot of problems. The fact that this thing is optics ready is a huge plus because I love to run optics. You can go irons if you want. The safety was easy to get to, easy to manipulate since it's right there in the spot a 1911 safety would be, left or right-handed since it is ambidextrous. The same goes for the slide stop slide release. It was slightly extended in the right position for my thumb pad, but it is single-sided only set up on the left side of the pistol for a right-handed user. The hammer can be let all the way down once loaded if that is your thing. I'm not really doing that because it doesn't do you any favors on that first trigger pull. Overall, the range experience was actually pretty good with this thing. Everything from the grip angles to where the controls were located. And after testing that 92XI SAO, I was really curious if I was going to like a smaller version, because since I have bigger hands, like you can see, as compared to the size of that pistol, running something with external safeties and controls can be a little bit tricky. But I have to say, everything was just right where I needed it to be. And I think even if you have like medium to larger hands, you're gonna have a very easy time manipulating all of the controls here on this pistol. How about we put that trigger on the gauge? All right, let's take a good look at the 80X Cheetah trigger here. So as you can tell, double action, single action, by when I move the safety, it will relieve the hammer. And then if you go to that first kind of connection point, you can ride the hammer all the way forward. I know guys that carry like that. I personally wouldn't, because you're not doing yourself any favors on that trigger. But let's take a look at that. If you do it that way, you're doing the whole double action pull, right? And then if you do it from there, you're starting at 90, finish the pull, and then obviously if you are working double single, you're now at the very short, crisp reset right there from the single action design, which overall is not bad. So we're gonna go ahead and do trigger pulls here from these different positions and show you where this thing is going to pull at. And it will be kind of weird because of how arced that trigger is. So I kind of got to work a little bit of an angle on it to get the trigger in the spot I need it. So 4.9 or 4 pounds 9 ounces, excuse me, on that one. And then we're in our single action mode now. Obviously much lighter and much less movement, 2 pounds 15 ounces. And then if you do the whole, you know, ride the trigger all the way down thing, we'll see from there, and you're going to see it jump right back up to being much heavier at 5 pounds and 1 ounce. So overall, not a bad trigger depending on how you start, right? So if you come right off safe, you start at 90, finish the pull. If you do the whole thing where you ride the hammer down, you're going to be all the way starting from way out there. And then of course, when you're in single action, it's just a lot better that way. Now here are some basic specs for you if you really want to know the actual dimensions and the weight of this thing. So this is an all metal pistol, right? We have an aluminum grip on here, a steel slide, and a 3.9 inch steel barrel. It's 1.4 inches wide, it's 6.8 inches long, and it's 4.9 inches tall. You got two 13 round metal mags, weighs 25 ounces when it's empty, and it's going to come in black, gray, or green. Now I know some of you want to see those full specs for the Spec Army, so here you go. I don't know about you, but to me that thing just looks super cool, the way it's set up with the optic and the light on there. Now, if you like the 92 series of pistols, you are probably really going to like the 80X Cheetah series, right? And I know it's in 380, and people love to make fun of the 380 round. But trust me, I've seen people that have taken 380 and you don't want none of that business up in your face. And that 380 provides an option to get something like the 80X Cheetah with a 13 round capacity in a pretty small overall package, very similar to that of a Glock 43X. Now make sure you get subbed up to the channel, keep doing things out on the range. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. I will see you all on the next one.